This is part 2 of our Female Health Live series, this time Nutrition and Menopause. So I'm Matt, I'm the head of nutrition at Virgin Active. We've got Sarah. So Sarah is a leading functional nutritionist at the Lanzerhof, head of nutrition at Zuki, and member of the Royal Society of Medicine. I always need to remember that. Yeah. So we'd love you to ask questions and things as well. We'll log those, so please stay on. We're going to put so much good content, hopefully, for you together today. So as a bit of a backdrop, lovely people, if you're watching this, 1/3 of women worldwide are going through one of 3 phases of the menopause. So peri, the main, or post, literally right now. So there are estrogen receptors in every organ system of the body. We'll get into estrogen as well. And there's so many individual variabilities in terms of responses and symptoms. So Sarah, welcome. Let's get into symptoms in your experience and some of your clinical work, and also the age brackets. So when some of these things start happening, because I've heard some of it around 35. Could be that early.
It is absolutely
let everyone
mad.
know.
It's mad. Thank you, Matt. It's mad, isn't it? I mean, average age of menopause is sort of 50, 51, but that's menopause. That's when your periods actually cease.
Okay.
But before that, there can be a 10 or 12-year period when you're in perimenopause. So you can literally, if you're having a baby at 35, you can be having a baby and getting into sort of perimenopause at the same time.
Wow.
It is crazy. So like you said, 1/3 of women around the world are probably in some sort of menopausal stage every single day going on. And it hasn't been covered in the same way that puberty, pregnancy, every other stage has, which is extraordinary. It's being talked about a lot more now. Certain celebrities have got out there and they're really publicizing what they're going through and what they're trying and so on. The symptoms range from absolutely everything. I think the first one that most people notice is hot flushes and not sleeping and mood changes. It's kind of, when you think about it, it's sort of the reverse of puberty. When you're a teenager and you've got a teenage girl and she's a bit moody and maybe she's sleeping a bit too much or whatever, you think, oh, we know what's going on. It's hormones. When you see a menopausal woman, you're like, oh, hang on. It's not expected. They're expected to still be performing, looking after families, running businesses, probably looking after aging parents, all that stuff. And you don't necessarily think of what they're going through as well. Wow. So sleep. There can be things like menopausal headaches because the estrogen affects the blood vessels in the brain, all sorts of things.
And we'll get into the hormonal responses in a couple of minutes, but this is just a bit of an overlook on the symptom side. Sorry, carry on.
No, that's all right. I think the one that worries people most though is the menopausal weight gain.
Right.
Because you can put on sort of up to 10 pounds around the middle of menopausal weight, and these are women who have really looked after their diet and their exercise their whole lives, and suddenly they're doing the same thing and the weight starts piling on, and the usual response is to cut back on the calories and increase the exercise, and actually that's exactly the wrong thing to do.
So there's body compositional changes, obviously, physical changes in terms of movement, pain, things like that as well, and finding that, I don't know, aches, joints, how's that side of things too?
Well, let's get into estrogen. Estrogen is a messenger. It's a hormone.
Okay.
So what it does, its main role is to go around the body and prepare you to have a baby. So it literally goes to your brain and says, brain, we need to be focused. We need to be on point because you're about to bring a little person in the world and you need to stop that little person being eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or whatever.
Sure, like priming things.
It goes to your muscles and it says, muscles, we need to be a bit stronger. Skin needs to be that bit tighter. Everything, estrogen, bones, that's a really important one. Your bones need to be strong because you're about to carry another human being for 9 months, deliver it, bring another person into the world. Everything needs to be strong. Everything needs to be firing on all cylinders. When you start going through menopause and estrogen starts declining, it's not the first one that starts declining, it's progesterone first, but when estrogen starts to decline, all those signals start to switch off. It's like little figures, around your body go, okay, we can relax now. She doesn't need quite as strong bones. Her brain doesn't need to be quite as powerful as it was because we're not doing anything that's quite so important, again, as bringing another person into the world. So that messenger affects, like you said, there are receptors in every body system. That's it. Estrogen is a messenger for every single body system. So when it all starts to switch off, that's what causes all those symptoms.
So in terms of like the phases, if we just briefly go back to that, so the pre, the peri, will that those changes in estrogen and progesterone start happening there? Or for the audience, is it the main side of menopause? Where do these fluxes in hormonal function start to happen?
Well, it's kind of interesting because every woman has a different journey, but actually every process is the same.
Right.
So progesterone starts to fall first, and progesterone is the relaxation one. It's the one that comes in to make everything, it helps you sleep better, it brings your mood. So that's why the initial symptoms are often a bit of anxiety, not sleeping as well, hot flushes, things like that, because the progesterone is starting to decrease.
Okay.
What then happens is they're both coming down, but they get out of whack. So you have this imbalance. Sometimes estrogen can be too high, progesterone too low. Sometimes they're a bit like this, whatever. And it's when you go through those that the symptoms really start to go a bit mad. And, you know, different women will feel, some women are overrun with hot flushes. I had one poor client, she was, running a board meeting at the top of her career. And she said, I couldn't even breathe. I had to open the window. Temperature. Suddenly had a massive hot flush. They're not sleeping, the weight gain. And then, like I mentioned, things like menopausal headaches, because estrogen causes the blood vessels to dilate so more blood can get around the body.
Yeah.
So suddenly the blood vessels start to tighten and you can get migraines. Things like that.
That obviously happens as well with alcohol intake.
Yeah,
that's probably something a little bit different. So yeah, what I'm hearing is obviously the physical side and body composition, as you mentioned. You touched briefly on the psychological side, and I think we're finding out more about this. But often it's held in with a lot of women, isn't it? So anxiety, mood swings. We are talking a little bit more about it, but you know, doing things like this and airing these kind of conversations are important. So maybe just the brief changes potentially on in your experience with some women on the psychological side for menopause, and then we'll get into how nutrition intersects some of these things.
There's a lot of differences between different cultures around the world.
Right.
Certain Asian cultures, and actually certain kind of South American, Andean cultures value that stage of a woman's life because she is entering a period of wisdom. Whereas over here, hysterectomy was called because of hysteria or whatever. I mean, we have always thought it's almost something to be ashamed of.
Right.
And that can be worse in certain other areas of the world where actually going through menopause, it's seen as the end of your useful life and pretty much you should be put out to grass.
Massive stigma.
Massive stigma. So there is this cultural difference between different areas of the world, and that's something we really have to work on. But I didn't completely answer your question before about the different stages. That it's the perimenopausal area where you can go through for like 12 or more years, where you've got that cycling of the estrogen progesterone. Menopause actually is one day. It's 1 year after you've had your last period. That is 1 day of your life. And then you're in post-menopause.
Okay, so that's the kind of clear definition,
That's a clear definition
of the main phase of menopause.
Yeah.
Okay, and then briefly touching on the span of the post phase. I know again it can be individual.
Yeah.
If we just kind of box off those, you know, the stages there.
Yeah.
How does that post phase?
So that is
work?
1 year past your last period. The rest of your life, you are post-menopausal. And we haven't mentioned testosterone, by the way.
Yeah.
That's another one that's important for muscle, for strength, for brain, and that goes down as well.
Okay.
So all three of them are gone.
Yeah, so estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, they're changing.
Yeah.
You've got the peri, the main, and then the post phase, which is the year after.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant, cool. So yeah, hopefully if you're still with us through that kind of phase, we're gonna get into how nutrition intersect some of this, and then some of the practical and useful things, you know, the audience can start to use and think about. So it's obviously a massive area, but we'll just try and make it simple, and in your experience, some of the things that people can actually introduce to help with these phases and these changes physically, mentally.
Yeah. Well, I think something that's always frustrated me is that I feel this is a period of a woman's life when she should be rewarded. She's probably had a career, brought up children, done this or that, and then guess what happens? You put on weight, you can't drink alcohol anymore, you can't eat the chocolate cake. There are certain foods that, when you're going through menopause, start to affect you more, and that's because the fall in estrogen actually affects your insulin production and the insulin receptors as well.
Okay.
So sugar handling becomes a lot harder. So whether you could get away with that chocolate cake or donut or something before, you can't. When you start getting into menopause. And alcohol is another one. We find it much harder to metabolize alcohol when we're going through menopause. So I get so many clients who will come to me and they say, you know, I used to have a glass of wine or something. Now I wake up. That's it. I'm awake 3, 4 in the morning. I cannot tolerate wine anymore.
Okay.
Spirits, some of the lighter spirits, a vodka, a gin and tonic, something like that, you may get away with, but alcohol, you have to, unfortunately, and the hangovers will be a lot worse,
Right.
because you just haven't got these coping mechanisms going on anymore.
Interesting. So yeah, so it could be like portion size side of things.
Yeah.
From the type side of things, the carbohydrate intake.
Yeah.
Some of those maybe high GI, sugary foods, processed
Yes.
foods, things like that. Not that they're bad, but it just could be managing portion
balance.
size and managing timings.
Yeah.
So from like a food first point of view, what kind of things are we talking about? Foods that are higher in fiber. You're trying to get clients to eat more vegetables that grow above the ground, fruits, things like that.
Yeah.
You know, what can we introduce if we know some of the things we might need to minimize?
Okay, you just mentioned fiber, really important, because one of the other things that happens during menopause is that your digestion slows down. You're more likely to become constipated. Everything just sticks in the system that little bit longer. So having that fiber and maybe taking some magnesium as well, that can help with sleep and with the whole digestive tract as well. Fiber is really important. The other thing that is key is protein.
Okay.
And a lot of women start to decrease their protein intake during this phase. They find it a bit harder to digest. It just sits heavier. Everybody past the age of 40 produces fewer digestive enzymes and less hydrochloric acid. So even if you're eating a really good diet, you might not be absorbing it well. But taking a digestive enzyme can help that. The protein, I find with a lot of women, having protein before 10 o'clock in the morning is a real game changer. It just helps set them up for the day, makes everything that bit easier. And then I get them to concentrate on having a good source of protein, vegetarian, meat, fish, whatever, but a good source of protein with every meal and every snack. Even if it's if you're having an apple, have some nuts and seeds with it as well. Something just to get that protein in there. I think that's really important.
So the timing side of things, like you said, getting protein first thing in the day. People watching this, there might be a portion or two of high protein foods away. You know, they don't necessarily have to count calories and grams of protein per day. You can if you want to play food detective, but obviously if it's just an extra portion in each meal, that's going to start helping with things. And then fibers, obviously, it's the type of carbohydrate that we can't digest in plants, but you know, our bacteria, our gut and things like that use it, helps with motility and things as well. So people that if you're shopping and things, you know, read labels, packages, use some of these apps if you need to as well to kind of understand fiber intake. And those two things are kind of the big key rocks, would you say, the protein and the fiber?
I really would. Do you know what my rule is for the fiber thing? If you're trying to lose weight, one portion of starchy carb fiber a day. So that's your brown rice, butternut squash, sweet potato, quinoa. What else is there? The starchy, the ones we can't digest that are really fibrous, one portion. If you're maintaining or putting on weight, you're going to get away with 2 portions a day. So one decent portion of fiber and then protein with every meal.
Interesting. And you also mentioned briefly magnesium. Obviously, there's a supplement side. You might come onto that at the end. But magnesium-rich foods, if I recall, you've got bananas, cashew nuts, brown rice,
dark green leafy veg.
Yeah, always avoid those. I'm not a fan of kale. But yeah, so those kind of things are obviously going to add magnesium intake into someone's diet. So muscle contraction side and energy intake side. So play food detective around magnesium-rich foods. So fiber, magnesium, protein.
Definitely.
It's a huge area to cover, but I suppose we're trying to be as practical as possible. Are there any other kind of really big rocks before we
the essential fats.
Dive a bit deeper?
The essential fats, the omega-3s. If you have been used to having a more of a processed diet, then you are more likely to be heavy on the omega-6 side. And it's really important to get the omega-3s in there for brain health, for keeping skin, hair, everything going. So that's your oily fish, salmon, mackerel, herrings, things like that. And again, nuts and seeds as well. So it's not to be afraid of fats, but it's just getting the right fats in there.
Sure.
And the last rock is definitely water, hydration. Really, really key. You need water for every single enzyme reaction in the body. I get my clients to go for 3 litres a day, the women.
Interesting.
Yes, you're going to go to the loo more. Don't do it last thing at night.
Work up towards it.
Work up towards it. That can be an absolute game changer, getting your hydration right.
Interesting. So from the omega-3 side of things, what would be a practical way of including like portions per week, if it is oily fish or if it is nuts and seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, like roughly? You know, what do we know from the research side? What do we know that helps with a lot of, you know, these changes in female hormone distribution through the week roughly? Is it 3-4 portions? Is it 5, 6? You know, what can women watching this do?
I try to get a portion in every day. I love ground flax seeds.
Okay, but a handful of nuts counts, or a tablespoon
handful
of
nut counts,
seeds
but I
count?
love those ground flax seeds. Flax seeds also work on the phytoestrogen side. They're a bit like the soy isoflavones.
Right.
So they've got a sort of double whammy. They've got the omega-3, plus they've got the isoflavones in there as well.
Yeah.
So if I'm having a Greek yogurt, some nuts, some fruit in the morning, teaspoon of flax, it can go on anything. You don't really taste it. It just adds a little bit of, almost like a powder, those ground ones.
Okay.
And because it's ground, the thing is with seeds, I like them ground first because otherwise the body doesn't always digest them and you're just going to poop them out a day later.
Exactly.
So it's quite good to have them ground.
Yeah.
Same way with chia seeds, I want you to soak them first.
Sure.
Overnight,
And
something
that
like
just
that.
takes a bit of planning, doesn't it?
It does take
And
a bit of planning.
You can buy the ones that are milled and things as well, like you said, or you can grind them, you put them in a coffee grinder or something.
Yep.
And then do you have to keep these things in the fridge once they're ground?
Yes, once they're ground, you should keep them in the fridge. Just keeps them that bit fresher. You don't want them going rancid.
Yeah. And if anyone's into omega-3 supplementation, if they don't like fish or, I don't know, say it's maybe more cost effective, do they stay in the fridge as well?
I keep them in the fridge. And the minute it starts to taste rancid, you know it's not good. You want one that doesn't taste. You don't want those fishy burps later in the day. Sure. Definitely.
What if you touched on the I can never say the isoflavones. Yeah. If we just briefly discuss a couple of minutes on soy and products there, I think it's a confusing area. So things like tofu, tempeh, I know there's a range of plant milks that can have added things into them that you don't necessarily need. But what's your stance on soy products or foods that contain soy for women going through these 3 phases? You know, would you advise them?
So there is all this research on women in Asia where they go through menopause. They seemingly do not have the symptoms that we do over here in the West.
Okay.
And it is being put down to their consumption of soy products. Right. However, they don't touch soy milk. They will have the edamame beans, the tofu, and the tempeh, and the miso.
So tempeh is like the kind of fermented, flatter, you can grill it. Interesting.
Okay. It's quite a difficult one. It takes a bit of work.
Yeah, you need to flavour it.
It needs to flavour, I mean, it's the same with tofu. But, you know, you can get a soft tofu and make it into a smoothie, and there you've got your protein as well. Sure. That's kind of the easiest. And then again, if you're doing the firm tofus, you do want to marinate them first. It takes a bit of planning.
Yeah. So either if you're doing a bit of food prep yourself, or if you're buying some of these things, if there's meal prep kits, or if you're going to restaurants, I suppose it's variety. Not being scared of some of these soy-based foods or products and things as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So the way they work is that they mimic the estrogens, but they do it in an adaptogenic way. Okay. So if you are too high in estrogen, they can kind of temper that down a bit. Right. And if you're low in estrogen, they can get on the receptors and sort of bring you up a bit. It's quite clever. It's like some of those herbs like ashwagandha and things that we talk about that are adaptogens.
Popular.
This is what they do.
Okay.
And this is the theory that the Asian women, because they are eating these products every day, they have that much gentler transition through menopause. So soy, I think, is good. The isoflavones, you can get supplements as well where you can just take them if you don't want to be bothered with the actual product. Edamame, I think, are a great snack for women going through menopause. Perimenopause, a whole lot. When I mention going through menopause, I kind of mean the whole thing. Yeah,
we mean like the 3 phases.
Yeah, kind of mean the whole thing. But edamame beans, absolutely great snack. You've got a bit of protein, you've got the isoflavones in there as well.
So just to box that off, again, portion sizes roughly per week. We're not giving out individual recommendations, but people to start to think about these things. Are you talking 3 or 4 portions of some of these foods you've mentioned?
Well, the people who benefit most from these are the ones who maybe can't take HRT.
Right.
So that's maybe at the start of your journey before you actually want to get into the HRT, but maybe you feel a couple of these symptoms. You think, well, hang on a minute, let's just do something.
What can we do from a food first point?
Exactly. So at that point, I would go 1 portion a day. And by that, I would mean, a handful of edamame, a portion of tofu. Yeah. I mean, you're talking sort of palm size.
Be creative about how to flavour it and add those things in.
Exactly.
Okay, so so if you've listened to this like nutrition phase, and we talked about some of these magnesium-rich foods, protein-rich foods, fiber rich foods, soy as well. It's just adding a couple of extra portions into your week and finding the variety. And then I think hydration again is, lubricating joints, energy levels, helps you feel fuller for longer and things like that.
Sleep better as well.
So if you have written any questions and things in, we'll get to that. but I think we want to get to the exercise side.
Yeah.
And you obviously have a personal story with
yes.
Pilates. So obviously, if you're watching this, we do reformer Pilates, mat Pilates, we do yoga, we do hot yoga. We do a variety of these classes, and they're excellent. You have a bit of a personal story
well,
around
I love this
menopause,
because
Pilates, exercise. Let's do that for a couple of minutes.
Sorry, I was interrupting. I love this because like I said at the beginning, what always happens is that women, they start to put on a little bit of weight. And we haven't talked about that, by the way. That's the cortisol weight. When you start to lose the estrogen, it gets channeled down into cortisol.
Okay.
And that's the sort of secondary stress hormone when your body says, okay, tomorrow she's going to have to jump out of a window, run from a bear, do something. We better lay down some fat stores because there's a famine about to happen.
Okay.
And you put on this 5 or 10 pounds of cortisol weight around your middle.
Right.
Nightmare. Anyway.
And that's redistribution as well, isn't it? So the actual the body fat will move to
because it's easily accessible. So that's where it is.
Right. Wow.
And what happens is women, they have the same reaction all the time. They cut their calories and they up their exercise. So if they were doing 3 HIIT classes a week, now they're doing 5, and they're going out for a run, and they're doing things that actually exacabate the stress response and increase the cortisol even more.
So
anyway,
how did you kind of break that mold and change things?
So about a year and a half ago, I moved to right near to a very nice Pilates studio, and I started doing Pilates seriously 3 times a week. Yeah. Doing the reformer, doing the tower, really, really good classes.
Yeah. Everything we do,
Everything you do here at Virgin Active, I just haven't found you yet.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then once a year, every November, I go and see a very expensive gynecologist in Harley Street, because I always think what you can't see, you've got to get it checked out. And he does like full ultrasound and everything.
Wow.
And this year, we're chatting away, and he goes, can I just say, everything? He says, your pelvis, bladder, everything in there. He said, it's really well supported. Everything's beautifully in place, really well supported. Are you doing Pilates?
Wow.
And I just thought, why did you not tell me this?
After those scans?
After the scan, everything on the ultrasound, he says, absolutely great, really strong, really well supported. So, and that was definitely.
And that's a couple of classes a week?
It was 3 classes a week. Wow. I started in the August, that was about November. Okay. And I've kept it going since then, not 3 classes a week, but now I've kept it going. But it's just so nice, because I think when you do something like Pilates, you think, it's not a cop-out as such. You feel better afterwards.
Yeah, it's
but
challenging.
You think maybe I'm not getting the benefits that I did when I was running or doing HIIT classes or whatever. But I think switching the exercise to something a little bit less stressful and a bit maybe more impactful can have just as much impact on the body. And it's actually really important in this phase of a woman's life.
Creating muscle tension, isn't it?
Yes.
The range of movement. Slightly lower intensity. Yeah. And obviously it's very challenging, but then creating that stimulus a few times a week.
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic. That's such an interesting story, and actually testing and not guessing.
Yes.
Obviously you had the opportunity to do that. Not everyone watching this will, but then they can certainly engage in these classes and do some of these things.
Yeah.
And wow, that's fantastic. Cool. So I think if we briefly mention, obviously we're food first, as everyone knows, from a Virgin Active side of things, and what we do with the food in clubs and what we do with our nutrition coaching and things like that as well. But in terms of supplementation, we might get some questions and things on it as well. You mentioned magnesium, you mentioned omega-3. Yes. Let's just do a quick fire, like minute or so, and then we can take some questions and things from the audience.
Okay, I did bring a couple of samples.
Just a bit of an overview.
Because I do work with a company called Zuki. So we spoke about magnesium. Can be life-changing for women, honestly, if you get a good magnesium supplement in there. But I've got to mention collagen.
Okay.
So menopause has been a bit hijacked by calcium.
Right.
Since the Milk Marketing Board put out some adverts years and years ago, decades ago, on how really the only place you can get calcium is dairy, and that's what we need. And actually, we now know that you get calcium from a lot of different sources, and it needs to be balanced with magnesium, vitamin D, boron, all sorts of things to be taken into the bones properly.
Okay, quite complex.
But what the bones are mostly made up of is collagen.
Right.
And 30% of the 30% of the protein in our body is collagen. The word comes from the Greek. Colla means glue. Gen means to make. It means to make glue. It's literally the scaffolding that holds us together.
Interesting.
So from about the age of 30, we lose 1% of our production of collagen per year.
Okay.
And when you go through menopause, that falls off a cliff. So by the time you're
more
about
than 1%
60,
a year then?
a lot
in
more
your
than
midlife.
1% a year. So that's why men age faster than women at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then women sort of catch them up during menopause, really. So by the time you're 60 or something, you're trying to maintain your strength, your flexibility, your scaffolding with about a third of the collagen production you had when you were 25.
Interesting. Okay. So, and then obviously from a food first point of view, animal products contain collagen.
Yes.
You know, they obviously come in powdered form. I know you've got the liquid form, and then obviously there's the marine side. The plant-based side, is there anything coming?
There is no such thing as a vegan collagen. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What they've done is they've taken the collagen is made up of 3 main amino acids.
Yeah.
Glycine, hydroxyproline, and the other one, which I can't remember right now because I'm having a menopausal moment.
That's okay.
Anyway.
Glycine, hydroxy. Yeah.
Yes, it'll come to us afterwards.
Yeah.
They've taken those 3 amino acids separately from plants, but there is nothing to say that they will actually get inside the body and make the collagen afterwards.
Yeah.
Collagen, bone broth.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic.
Oh yeah, stock soups, things like that.
Stocks and soups.
So it can be done.
Well, yes. I mean, you see, collagen mostly is in skin and bone and things like that. So just eating maybe a chicken breast or something, you're not going to get that much.
We're coming into the soups and stews.
Bones, sardines, you know, little sardines and
tins.
pilchards. Yeah, they used to eat. Our parents' generation, my parents' generation.
And you take your omega-3 box. Cool. Okay.
Exactly.
Nice. So let's do some questions, lovely people. Do we have any? Hopefully we do. Hit me up.
People asking on the chat, well, how they can access the information after.
Cool. So yeah, what we'll do is we've got a nutrition coaching page on the Virgin Active website. We'll put the key points together as like a download, free download, and yeah, you'll be able to access the information from there. So we'll summarise that, and then you can use it and take it away and benefit from it. Awesome.
So a few questions from the chat. So can insulin introduction delay the menopause without inducing diabetes? Maybe
so like a diabetic.
Insulin introduction delay the menopause.
So a diabetic taking insulin, that must be then.
Can insulin introduction delay the menopause without inducing diabetes?
I have absolutely no idea.
I'd be cautious with that, yeah. Unless you're diabetic, I don't think it's taking insulin if you're not diabetic.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't start taking insulin unless you have got to. Yeah, I mean, because it is. I see where they're getting to, because it's kind of the other way around. So the menopause affects insulin receptors and whatever. So if by taking some, can you delay it? I've honestly no idea. I can't give.
I don't think I've ever seen any research on people that don't need insulin outside of being diabetic taking it, and the effects on menopausal symptoms. So yeah, I think that's an area of research that either we don't know about or doesn't exist. Yeah. Wow, interesting question.
Worth asking an endocrinologist.
Yeah. Endocrinologist, and definitely speak with the GP first.
Okay. What sort of tests or questions should a woman ask their doctor to confirm whether this is happening to them?
Great question.
So you can get, if you go NHS, they will do a basic FSH, LH, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone test to see what those levels are. If you can afford to go private, there is a fantastic test called a Dutch test, where you just collect your urine for 24 hours and they look at all the levels. They also look at the pathways your estrogen is going down. They see how it's metabolized, progesterone, testosterone. It also looks at your cortisol levels over the 24 hours. Really, really good one. I think it's about £300, and you probably have to pay for a consultation on top. But if you can go down the private route...
So your GP and NHS first can do that panel that you mentioned?
They can do the basic one, so they can tell you where you are. If you can go privately, you can get very good detailed
coverage.
ones.
Okay, well, there's 2 options there, isn't it? And it depends on the person's budget, I suppose.
Yeah.
Cool.
Can you talk about sugar cravings during perimenopause?
Yes, I can. And again, this is something that magnesium can help with a bit. Sugar
Food
cravings.
Food and supplementation.
Sugar cravings, they can be there for different reasons, and it can be masking a nutrient deficiency underneath, something called chromium. Chromium is what we use for sort of blood sugar control, and if you're deficient in that, you are more likely to get these sugar cravings. Obviously, there's emotional reasons as well. I mean, if you get to Friday at 5 o'clock and your mother-in-law's coming round, or I don't know, whatever.
Environmental stuff.
You know, there is
Stress.
sort of environmental stuff and stress as well.
Yeah.
Depends on the time of day that you get the sugar craving. Something that works in the evening is if you brush your teeth straight after dinner. I know that sounds bizarre, but if you brush your teeth straight after dinner, you're less likely to then go and get the chocolate, bizarrely. And then it's just kind of weaning yourself down. Dark chocolate, by the way, it's not all doom and gloom. Dark chocolate is actually excellent for women going through.
Intake as well.
Magnesium intake is a few kind of lovely phytochemicals and things in there, rather. So if you can get yourself up to sort of 85% dark chocolate. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Another thing I get people to do is prepare their snacks beforehand. So get a little Tupperware, put in your little bit of chocolate, your little bit, but you've also got some nuts or seeds, or maybe a bit of dried fruit or something in there as well. So you've got your snack, you've got your little bag or your Tupperware, and you've got that little treat in there, but it's not the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'd say food availability. So we actually had a conversation about this outside the room earlier. If you're going in and it's literally in front of you, make it a little bit harder. You know, it's not the first thing you see when you go into the fridge. And you mentioned training intensity. If you're training very intensely and pushing the limit, high intensity training is fueled by carbohydrates, muscle glycogen. You're going to want to refuel quickly. Your body's going to want sugary, sweet things. So if you vary the intensity of training and you manage where these foods are at home or in the office or wherever, portion size too, that can alter cravings. So there's a habit thing there, there's a food environment thing there, and there's a training type of training. Yeah. So lower the intensity of training and you might not have as aggressive cravings and want to recover with these sweet foods. Quite interesting to consider.
I think bizarrely as well, protein intake. If a woman's not eating enough protein, she'll get more sugar cravings
feeling fuller. Yeah. So a portion or two extra protein a day could make a massive difference. Yeah. Cool.
When should I get medical help, such as going to HRT?
Okay. Individual, but I think pre-warned is pre-armed, or whatever the phrase is. So really, when you start getting the symptoms, go to the GP, because what you can start with, if you're not sleeping and you're getting hot flushes, maybe what you want to start with is one of the progesterone patches. Now, there is the NHS HRT, then there is the bioidentical HRT as well, which is the things like the wild yam creams and so on. So it depends individually which way you want to go. And some women find one way works better than the other, and also there's a budget issue.
Of course.
But you might want to start fairly early on with just one of the progesterone creams or patches. That can make the difference with helping you sleep and just bring the hot flushes down. So I think starting to go in there and finding a sympathetic GP as well. Some GPs are far more alert to this, far more up on it than others. I mean, I'm still getting clients coming to me saying they've gone to the GP and the GP's just gone, oh, it's all in your mind, have some antidepressants or something. Wow. It's just horrifying, actually, how much misinformation there is, even in the established medical community around menopause, and how much women can be dismissed as, oh, it's just something you've got to put up with. It's a bit like heavy periods when you're a teenager, or painful periods, and all that stuff. And now, finally, endometriosis and all these things are starting to come out. It's the same with menopause. If you get the wrong answer, then you need to see a different GP. Okay,
and then the consensus maybe years ago, HRT and things, you know, not a good thing to do for health reasons. Is that changing? I know there's no perfect answer, but for the person who's asked the question, anyone's still on, we're more conscious that it can be a great route for some women, can't it?
It absolutely can be life-changing for many, many women. However, if you've got breast cancer in the family, that's something that needs to be monitored. And that's something that actually getting one of those private hormone tests can really help with, because when I talked about the way that estrogen is metabolized, it can go down 3 routes. 2 of those routes are completely harmless. One of those is the breast cancer route, and if you've got that particular pathway, you need to know about it. Anyone who's been through breast cancer already will not be able to take estrogen. Anybody who's on any of the tamoxifen or any medications like that cannot take HRT. They can take some sort of bioidentical bits and pieces, but it's not easy. So it is.
It's for individual.
It is very
GP
individual.
First. If there's opportunity for private testing, but don't be afraid to have that conversation and change practitioners if they're just not wanting to address it. Okay, cool. I hope that helps. Bit of a longer answer, but still good detail.
I think we touched a bit on this, but should I avoid alcohol during menopause?
Interesting.
Unfortunately, it's going to become a lot harder to metabolize the alcohol. Again, it's a bit individual. For myself, I cannot tolerate wine unless if I have a glass at lunchtime in the sun when I'm on holiday, I'm absolutely fine. But if I have wine in the evening, forget it. And I only ever have like 1 glass or something, I will wake up. I'm one of those. I'll wake up 3
When was that
in the morning.
switch then, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I don't mind. It was.
You don't have to tell us your age, but obviously like roughly that kind of area.
I would say about 5-6 years before the actual menopause, I started noticing.
So would you then just change the portion size or the type?
I change
or the timing?
type. So if I am going to drink, and I certainly don't drink every night, if I am going out or something, it'll be one gin and tonic.
Yeah. Okay. We believe you. No, I'm joking.
Yes.
But yeah, so yeah, but you switched.
I switched
to more of a spirit.
the spirits. I don't even bother with
Okay.
wine anymore, but unfortunately, just when you want to be reaching for the bottle, maybe to get over everything that's in your life, it becomes that much harder to metabolize.
And is it something in wine? Or is it
I'm not
just,
honestly
again, it's
sure if
individual?
it's the sugar content or what it is in
Yeah,
wine, but
okay.
everybody has the
Interesting.
same response.
Right. So yeah, so it could be the timing, changing the type of alcoholic beverage, and obviously portion size, and I think take it from there. Again, a wide-ranging answer, but I hope it's helpful. Great questions. Again, lots of good questions.
Yeah, just one on what you spoke about before. Is there any particular tests that, or what private tests in detail?
Okay, the test I
Maybe
was
just be
mentioning for
brief.
hormones is
Yeah.
a Dutch test,
Okay.
which if anybody wants to contact me afterwards, if you do put my details up, I'm happy to put them onto that.
Yeah.
The other
we
thing
do
that is
NHS
useful could
first.
be a nutrient deficiency test or just
It's like a full blood panel.
Full blood panel,
Yeah.
but you're also looking at, am I low in vitamin D? Am I low in iron? Iron
Yeah.
is another one.
Yeah.
We don't absorb iron as well going through menopause.
Yeah.
They estimate we only absorb about 20% of the iron we're actually eating. So that
yeah.
can go low again.
Yeah.
So getting a nutrient deficiency panel, I think.
Yeah, and
can
that's
be
so
really
you know,
important.
speaking to your GP about a full blood panel, especially this time of year, and having iron tested, B12 tested, and then just taking it from
Bit
there.
D,
You know, they'll
always.
know they'll know when
Yeah.
you ask that. They'll know you know about what it involves and how to talk you through it. Red blood cell count, hemoglobin, things like that. So these things are accessible. I know we've mentioned this other private test, but there are things that are accessible through your GP and health provider first. Good to be interested in it though.
Okay, got 3 more, so no further.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
Right,
Cool.
What's the biggest lever you see for losing the menopause, Tommy?
So that again, what's the biggest?
The biggest lever you see for losing the menopause?
Okay, I think
Interesting.
changing.
There's no one answer for that,
yeah,
is there?
actually, what you don't want to do is starve yourself because that puts another stress on the body. So I actually think
Not
if you
aggressive calorie deficit.
Definitely not. If you can speak to a trainer and make sure you're getting enough calories that you need, because you shock your body when you go into calorie deficit. It is a bit of a shock and it's another stress. So you're going to keep on more weight. So I think the intermittent fasting can be interesting, but because I want people to eat protein before 10 in the morning, they've got to have their dinner that bit earlier. And then cutting out the sugar, loads of vegetables, the protein. You've got to get really strict on your diet, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think just playing food detective a bit more, obviously.
Yeah.
I always say the 3 T's, so total, type and timing. I think varying the intensity of exercise, not creating too much of an aggressive calorie deficit, and fueling your exercise sessions, because obviously if you want to change your aesthetics, it comes to the stimulus of the training session. You know, if you're maintaining muscle or you're wanting to look more athletic in certain areas of your body, or lean or toned or whatever, you need to fuel for the work required. So your carbohydrate intake, fueling your sessions, and then further away from your exercise, you could manage portion size, manage sugar intake, creating a calorie deficit slowly over time, and not always hammering the higher intensity training sessions, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women, in my experience, I'm a nutritionist as long as Sarah, but I've done it for about 10 years, weighing yourself daily, you get a lot of data points, but I would try to leave it a bit longer. You know, change will come every 4-6 weeks physically, you know, actually reducing body fat, or growing lean mass and muscle. And I think so many of us will want to see daily changes, and that can discourage us a lot.
Definitely.
As
I think keeping the muscle up actually is really important. Doing the
Waist
resistance
measurement.
training.
Yeah.
And the other thing is reducing the stress. So bringing in things like meditation, breathing techniques, making sure your sleep hygiene's on point, you're really sleeping well.
Yeah.
All of that, just reducing the stress means you're less likely to hold on to that cortisol. So bring in those things in.
Yeah.
Saunas.
Yeah,
great.
that's an interesting one.
Bit of that
Yeah.
kind of
We have
stuff.
obviously saunas in all of the clubs. So from a detoxification point of view, you're sweating. You know, obviously so much kind of modern day pollution and things. Heat shock proteins that helps with muscular recovery. Great place to do some meditation and things as well. Obviously, we don't advise you to sit in a sauna to sweat to lose weight, because that's just water weight. But it can be something that can help from a relaxation and recovery side as well. So yeah, training intensity look at, the total amount of food, obviously a slight calorie deficit, keeping your carbohydrates around your exercise sessions, and then managing some of those foods that are a bit sweeter or a bit more processed. I think further away, and especially later in the evening, could really work. So hopefully that gives you a couple of things to latch onto.
We'll do one more.
Of course, yeah. Go.
And then any unanswered on the website afterwards.
Yeah, of course. We'll put the content up, guys, and the key points and things as well. So we'll summarise it all.
Okay, so last one. How do you suggest I guide my vegan and vegetarian clients around collagen while trying to respect their choices?
That is a really tough one, because there is not vegetarian. Okay, you can get an eggshell collagen, which is a bit more expensive and harder to find at the moment. For the vegans, I don't have a good answer for that. There isn't a good. I mean,
would you just focus on overall protein intake from plant-based foods in terms of finding that variety, increasing the total grams of protein intake per day, even though you might not be able to increase the kind of collagen consumption through the plant-based collagen supplements. We're not sure they're effective yet. They might be leading you down a place where they're expensive.
Well, I don't think it's worth taking them, because the idea is, I wouldn't not advise them, but I mean, they've got vitamin C and other things in them which hopefully are going to promote the body's own production of collagen a bit. I would focus on everything else that's important, all the calcium, the magnesium, everything else that's important for making the bones, the vitamin D and so on. If they cannot take an animal form of collagen, then I would focus on absolutely everything else, making sure their protein intake is on point, and then all the other factors that increase the production of collagen. Sure.
Yeah. So the calcium-rich foods could work in there, as you mentioned. What was the other mineral?
The other thing I'm going to mention is the right type of exercise, because it's weight-bearing exercise. So maybe that is somebody that, we were talking about vibration plates earlier for racehorses and their legs, which used to be popular in gyms a while ago. But things like walking, skipping, anything like that, that's sort of weight-bearing.
Very accessible.
Very accessible. You want to get them focusing on those. And again, the resistance exercises as well. So everything else apart from actually taking collagen, that can help boost the bones.
Yeah, so you've got obviously the training side of things and the muscle stimulation side of things and tension, calcium-rich foods, making sure the plant-based protein intake, and there's a variety there. If you are a coach and you've asked this question, you can work out grams per kilo a day. You could look at 1.2, 1.4, something like that, build it up, grams per kilo. And then vitamin D, obviously you can get it in some foods, but really it will be sunlight and then supplementation through the winter, and GP can measure that as well. And then generally liquid forms and things tend to absorb a little bit better, but depends on your budget and things, so take it from there. Cool, awesome. All right, guys, well, thanks for all your questions. It's been brilliant having you on, Sarah.
Amazing. Great questions.
We'll put everything together in terms of the summary and the topics. We'll get it up on the website, and keep in touch with everything we're doing with Virgin Active UK on social media and things. And hopefully we'll do another live soon.